What if the most important story in your family is the one that's about to be lost? Not because it didn't matter, but because no one ever captured it. A few weeks ago, I sat inside a historic library in San Salvador with Marco Barada, a man beginning his journey of preserving his father's life story, before time decides for him. This video isn't just about history, it's about responsibility. You're going to see what it looks like in real time when someone chooses to step up and document their family legacy. The questions, the uncertainty, the emotions, and the first steps toward preserving something that will outlive all of us. My name is Thomas with Save Their Stories and the Oral History Practice. I help families capture, preserve, and pass down their stories so they're not just remembered. They're experienced by future generations. If you believe your family's story deserves to last, make sure to like this video and subscribe, because this is just the beginning. Let's step inside the biblioteca and into Marco's story. So Marco, why do you want to preserve your family's history?
Well, actually, the history just preserves itself at a certain point. What we need to do is to recognize the substract of our present lives that is embedded in our history. It's not the history just of my family. In this particular case, it's the history of our nation as well, our country. So, particularly for me, it's very important because I feel a deep connection to this past, culturally, and there are lots of value that I could appreciate, that this is part of my identity. And as part of my identity and my belief about culture and values, I think it's important. That's why I think it's important.
What made you start looking into your great grandfather's story?
Well, it has always lived with me since I was a kid and has grown, as part of my life. And now that I'm an adult, and I see an emergence of rescuing those old values here in El Salvador, and the history of his migration along many Italians that came to this area, to this country, and the value that this culture gave to Hispanic values is immense. It's always the blended of the West in our culture as Hispanics, and I think it is very important not to disconnect us with this heritage, because this heritage is part of our identity. So, as a great grand, what will be I'm the great grand net, no,
Great grandson.
great grandson. It's very important for me to preserve this history and these values, and I completely identify with his work, which has done with this country. And also, one important thing, it's that it reflects as well our Western civilization, our Western culture, coming from Italy and spreading those values here that in El Salvador, who made his home from 1916, I believe 1615, until he died in 1972.
Okay.
So,
Have you? I'm gonna go off my little offbeat a little bit here. Have you looked into some of your father's history from other than what you know?
uh,
In addition to your grandfather, have you started working
oh
on
yes,
your father's history at all, or?
yes. I have made some research in websites or apps that allow you to look for example, when he was born, what house of Italy he was born. I already found that. Where is it? In Massa Carrara. And also a lot of photographic material that I have
Okay.
been collected
Okay.
through the years. So, and I'm planning to put all this together. You know, I don't know. I already uh, put something in the Facebook. I have something for him in the Facebook. He has his own page, as well as my great grandmother has his own page, her own page in Facebook. So in the way I can share some of his heritage to the
Right.
community.
Right. Right. Have you thought about getting his life story? Well, I should ask: is he still alive?
Say it again.
Is your dad still living?
Yeah, yeah,
Alive?
yeah, 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 yeah.
Okay. So, have you thought about capturing his story and getting that preserved and sharing that with your community?
Yes, yes. I think I have to interview my father a lot, so I can preserve some of those stories. I already have them because I have heard them all of my life. But in there is some particular things that I would like to know a little bit more.
Right.
But
Get
I have a lot of right now in my back of my head.
right. Would you be more interested in getting it like on video or on audio
Maybe in
and
a
have
documentary, maybe a
and
video.
and have it preserved that way so it's
Yes,
not lost, so it shows his emotions, his
yes.
tones, the way he
It's a
talks and all
great
that.
work because there's so many. There were two personalities really of the culture of this country in the golden age. Let's see, of cultural explosion, which runs from 1940s to 1960s. So there was this literature explosion, music, architecture, and all these migrants and people from El Salvador as well that put a very important background of our culture in that moment, and it still preserves until these times.
Okay. What feels intimidating or uncertain right now on your progress
Well,
with that?
it's a battle. It's a cultural battle because uh, you have to really push it a little bit harder in order to for people to appreciate that we are so embedded in technology right now, in modern, you know, technology and entertainment and all that stuff. And when you look back to the history and see all these people what they did by their own means, and trying to leave a cultural footage and footprint in our society. I mean, when the times when there was no technology, there was nothing, just art expression and hard work as well. It's really a challenge for our new generations to value that and to just think for seconds, just how did they make all this? Because at a certain point, we are seated in the corpse of our ancestors. In that, so let us not disconnect from that because that's our soil. That's our soil, and we need to, recognize that.
Right. What do you think could help the current youth continue saving their family history for the future?
Well, I think parents has a strong role in this because kids are not just by themselves look for that history. I think that parents need to talk to their kids about who their great grandfathers were or grandparents were, or where did they come from, and what did they did, and how you come here.
Yeah.
So that's conversation. That many of the heritage is passed by words. I mean, the best way is by in written form, but those conversations, those moments along with parents, with their children, talking about their family, showing pictures, showing stories. That's how history is done. That's how history is preserved in the family.
Yeah.
So let's put this stuff a little bit apart, and let's with, sit with your children and talk about their history and their stories.
Well, I highly agree with that. I would also add showing them the living history of the family,
Correct.
right? So I'm in the process of showing Abby and Tristan some of their family history by taking them there. And one of them is Abby's already been to Hawaii. I need to take Tristan there because that's where my dad grew up, right? But now I took the family down to El Salvador to see see some of Maggie's roots and her family culture and heritage by bringing them down to El Salvador so they can experience that where mommy grew up at in Santa
Tecla.
Yeah, there you go. And meet the rest of the family and get their stories.
Yeah.
You know, those oral traditions passed down to them that they can understand at this young age. So yeah, I totally understand that. I agree with it. All right, so what outcome are you hoping to have at the end of your project?
Well, just make a contribution about the coherence of time, because time doesn't jump from one point to the other. It has another event. So there is a big risk about society when they ignore that, because then you break a storyline, and the storyline, the story of our values as Western civilization. So, and that from the family too. That happens in the micro worlds of the family too. So when you stop doing that, there is a big risk of losing the coherence of the identity because the family has an identity, you know, and individuals' identity is part form for the family history. The identity comes from identifying with something and making it part of you. So when there is coherence in the way you act and your history, okay, you are complete. So the big risk is, you know, that everything will collapse if you don't connect with that history. You will just be an individual segregated and absorbed by modernism and, you know, whatever tendencies out there. You know, you're gonna be sucked by it. So one way to defend your family and defend civilization as well is connecting with the history. Of course, the mistakes that were made also needs to be right, you know, and correct. You know, all that, or those are details. But the main important thing is to connect, you know, and parents has big responsibility.
So your most important outcome is connection.
Connection. Yeah. That's
Connection.
right. Connection.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, cool. All right, Marco, thank you for this little
My
quick one.
pleasure.
All right. Heartwarming.
Stories like this are exactly why this matters. Because the truth is, if we don't record these stories, they disappear. Most families don't lose their history all at once. They lose it one story at a time. So if you're watching this and thinking, I should probably do this someday, don't wait. Now, the good news is, you don't need anything complicated to get started. This is actually the exact setup I use to record interviews like this. A smartphone, handheld tripod, and a simple system to guide the conversation. If you want to make this really easy, I put together a 30-minute family interview system that gives you the exact questions to ask. You can grab that in the description below. And if you want the full setup, the gear I recommend to get started, I've linked everything I use down below as well. But more important than gear is just starting that conversation. sit down with your parents, your grandparents, ask them about their story. Because one day, you'll wish you had. If this video meant something to you, hit like, subscribe, and go save their stories.